Analytics Rebel Alliance is counting on you. Like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, turn on that alarm bell so you don't miss any future mission. Hi there, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Chris Wagner. I'm the owner, operator, the creator of Kratos BI. I'm an analytics architect at Rockwell Automation. I provide detailed architectural support and code reviews, model reviews for 30 of our enterprise developers, broader scale support for our 400 business unit content creators, and an enterprise design and strategy for our, now 30,000 Power BI content. I was very fortunate in that I was lucky enough as being part of Rockwell and having a close partnership with Microsoft. I was very, very lucky in that 18 months ago, Microsoft approached Rockwell and myself saying, hey, we've got this new thing called Power BI Gen2. Would you be interested in helping us test this out and work with this? And I said, yeah. Let me know more about what this is. Of course, we're very interested in it. But yeah, let's get into it. And so, that really took me to what is Power BI Gen2, or what is Power BI Premium, and what is analysis services? Because understanding these two core principles is the heart of what's the advantage of Power BI Premium Gen2. There's two big pieces of the Power BI service. There's reports, there's dashboards, there's all that touchy-feely stuff that you have when it comes to how you consume and how you work with data. When it comes inside of Power BI Premium, you're allowed to share content out. You basically get a defined set of processors, memory, and resources that your organization can use for sharing Power BI content either internally or externally. But at the center of that, the core of Power BI has always been analysis services, and analysis services has had a while that's the engine, you mostly care about how you interact with Power BI, how you're in and working with it. Gen2 really revs up and changes how that internal engine works. So if you're familiar with Power BI Premium in the licensing and how you get access to stuff and share stuff and data flows and all of these other different points, Gen2 is going to be identical. Where Gen2 really starts to differentiate is what we're talking about, truly moving away from the technology that we used to have on-prem, which was, built off of servers, and, you installed SQL Server and you basically ran that in a server. Analysis services is very much, frankly, it's taking that VM and just having that be a managed service that's out inside of Azure. Gen2 starts to get us into that next wave, which is the true promise of the cloud, which is the ability to have that dynamic scalability where we can start to truly separate out our compute processes from our memory and storage capabilities, giving us much more dynamic flexibility when it comes to how we consume and work with the content. All right. Now, this is a big deal because if you've ever worked with either the on-prem analysis services or you've worked with even analysis services, you've always operated within the confined bounds of a set unit of memory and consumption, right? So at most, you are able to fill up analysis services with 70% of highly compressed data, leaving 30% broken out between data refreshes and user activity. This can be very difficult to manage when it comes to large data sets or even a whole bunch of smaller data sets where once you start to hit these thresholds, you can have some real problems when it comes to refreshing, user activity, all of that. Anything that you're doing in the service can become really problematic. And even if you split out from one big data set into a bunch of smaller data sets, truly your issues come from you still are having to operate within those bounds of that 70% utilization. Now, the big advantage that Gen 2 brings is that we get the dynamic ability to be able to share and work with uh, really almost as many dynamic data sets as we want that are fully utilizing our capacity. So no longer are you, if you have three models, do you have to try and divvy up and share that same set of memory? But you can have three, 4, 5, 15, 16 models, all of which are using up 70% potentially of those resources available, of memory resources for compressed memory. All right. Now, no longer do you really have to be concerned about how much memory you're using at any given point in time. The hoteling logarithm that Microsoft has, highly tuned inside the Power BI service to swap these memory sets in and out of memory is straight up fantastic, and it's something that you can't do on your own. So this is something you don't even have to see, you don't have to know anything about. Just you get the benefit of this. Oops. So this is something that is truly uh, where the magic and the ROI comes in for your production data sets analysis services, is in the ability to have a far higher number of models inside of that single data set. This is going to become exceedingly important in the years to come as we start to do more and more composite models, where the models that you're managing is you'll have a core set of model that you're managing the memory around, but then you'll have ancillary models or ancillary connections to that model. You want to have them all within the same premium capacity. You don't want to have them widely distributed out across your organization, because what you're talking about is having part of a model potentially on one server and another part of a model on another server. That back and forth is going to cause mass chaos for many organizations. So it's very important to understand this, get onto the Gen 2 architecture as soon as you can, and then appropriately manage your workspaces inside of your business units as you go forward. Okay. Now, the biggest piece that we have in Gen 2, because the memory is no longer a concern, is how do you manage the number of processors that you have available for you? Power BI Premium still offers you dedicated compute and cores that comes with it. So P1's 8 cores, P2 16, P3 32, right? It just keeps scaling up accordingly, right? Now, the nice thing that Gen 2 also brings is the ability to add in additional cores when you're under heavy load, right? So, we've always in the past been capped that if you had a P2, you only had 16 cores available for loading data, for user interaction, for your calc engine, whatever you had going on, right? That was all that you had. With Gen 2, you get the ability to start to dynamically add in and out cores. So now no longer are you capped at a premium capacity, but you can set overflow buffers on each capacity so that you can scale up, scale down for given points in time. This can be exceptionally useful, especially if you think about around month end or quarter end or year end, where you have a huge amount of things that need to be processed and refreshed. I would really caution you though, because the costs there are, it's not super expensive. It's something you can do, a few days of every month. You can scale up, but just leaving these things on and just letting them go can be very expensive. And in fact, if basically it means if you're going to be above 25% consumption for a given month, you really want to scale up to that next tier to get the benefits of having all of those cores available for you 24/7. Okay. That's something you have to be very careful around price-wise, because if you just turn this on, you let it run all month, um, you can quadruple your cost. 5 years from now, analysis services may still be around, but analysis services and SSAS will be a shadow of its former self compared to where Power BI Premium Gen 2 is going. In fact, I would say the only time you'll see people still using analysis services or SSAS on-prem is when there's some highly technical, legal, or political reason for why they still have to have those things in place. For example, you have no resources who could do a migration, or something along those lines. We really truly have feature parity between the two services. The last remaining item that I'm aware of that separates out analysis services, well, there's two. The two items that I'm aware of between analysis services and Power BI Gen 2 is number one, language translations. So if you need to have your Power BI reports come up and be user language dependent, right? So Spanish speaking people come in and they see Spanish language report, values and whatnot. That functionality today is still just an analysis services feature. I've honestly never seen or talked to someone who's doing that, so I would be very interested in what is the penetration of that, because I just honestly I don't think that is a limiting factor. And then the other one, the other thing that I'm aware of, and honestly I think this is a small use case, but there are people that use Power BI interactive reports that sit on top of scaled out analysis services solutions. So think of like if you have I think it's an A1 SKU or B1, I forget what it is, right? It's a 10 gigs of memory, but you have thousands and thousands of people hitting it all the time. So you actually have 20 replications of it or something like that. In that situation, if you're in that world, you'll still be using analysis services at least for a little while. That read capabilities, I'm not sure exactly when or where they'll have that. They've talked about it. I don't know if that's on any roadmaps, but the reality is, at one point in time, analysis services. I'm trying to remember some NDA stuff, what I'm not supposed to say. So, um, uh, uh, but I would, I, I am telling everyone, and what we're doing at Rockwell is we are mapping out our roadmap off of analysis services, off of SSAS, and everything is moving into Gen 2. Okay, um, that's what I'm telling anyone and everyone. If you're working, and this is a change, right? So and it kind of threw us off. We had a whole roadmap out for 3 years where we had like, okay, here's how everything SSAS moves into AAS. Well, we've had to like rejigger that whole thing. So if you're not able to rejigger and you're still going to AAS, like I said, 5 years from now, analysis services will still be here, I'm sure. Knock on wood. But if you can rejigger to use Gen 2 and lay out a new roadmap, you 100% should be looking at. Okay, that's where all the features are going to be. That's where all the functionality is going to be, and especially as you look at how tightly Synapse and Power BI are becoming, these two engines are going to start to become really synced between those two worlds. I would. This is where you should be going. You're just going to see huge improvements in this space. And this leads into another great option that we have available for us, which is something that has always been a challenge, which is how do you manage your dev and your QA environments. With analysis services, with SSAS, you had to have these big boxes or big services that were very expensive that you'd have in lower environments. Now with premium per user, you're able to spin up these models, and if you have a large team or even just a team of people, even if it's a team of two, people who are working on that same model and they're trying to make changes to different parts of it, with premium per user, you can deploy both those models and you can refresh both those models and you can validate both of those, right? And then it just becomes an act of how do you manage the merge on your data set, or on that tabular model, versus, oh, I can only have one data set refreshed at a time, or I'm just refreshing my parts of the model in, like my finance Chris Wagner data set, right? And then there's the finance Nicole data set, right? So she's refreshed her pieces, I refresh mine. My QA and dev aren't big enough to have two now full models in. Premium per user allows us to have our own data sets, do full refreshes, so we can really do legitimate, regression testing and testing out of any and all of the changes that we have going on. So this is a fantastic capability that, really you want Power BI Gen 2 and you want premium per user. And honestly, at $20 a month for premium per user, like, frankly, if you're just a Power BI Pro shop, this is a good use case for going to premium per user too, right? Like everything that I'm saying about premium Gen 2 also applies for premium per user. It's the same code base, it's the same memory management. In fact, from the get-go, Power BI Premium per user has been running on Gen 2, even though no one knew about that. So, we know Gen 2 is solid. We know it's it's ready to go. It's been GA for a month, or since October or whatever it was. At Rockwell, we converted all of our ad hoc Power BI content in February over to Gen 2. We went from seeing like somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 refresh failures a day across all of our things, down to sub 100. So it was a night and day change. It was fantastic. Now, when we turned on, because they had free scale compute until November 4th, we had to turn that off. When we had turned that on, we went from 100 refreshes failures a day to 3. So that was beautiful, but that ship has sailed. But once you have premium per user, then you can start to use Git repos for managing your XML code. You can start to use the DevOps pipelines that exist inside the service, and you can start to really leverage service accounts to move things around, and you can start to really get into that CI/CD automation like dream state that we all want to get to, right? Now, that's for those of you who are stuck working in like the enterprise space, and where 5 nines of uptime is always critical. If that's not you, and you live in the fire, as many of us BI developers do, and you just live in production, that's not quite as much of an issue for you. But I would still recommend check out those DevOps pipelines, because even if you're deployed to prod on a regular basis, there will be a day when you need to make some changes where it's like, I'm not so sure about some of these. These pipelines can be a lifesaver in making these changes at work. All right. And then the other big factor that we have here is the ability to integrate in the log analytics in with the workspaces. Getting those log analytics workspaces together is incredibly valuable when it comes to troubleshooting and managing your environment. Now, I do recommend that as part of this, you have to attach one log analytics workspace each environment where you have data sets that you're refreshing. But please make sure that if you're going with Gen 2, kind of identify what data sets that you have out in the service and separate out your data sets from your reports. That will be really helpful in managing how many log analytics workspaces you need, and creating the reports that sit on top of that. Yeah, so unfortunately not one premium Gen 2 tenant, but each Power BI workspace. I'm going to show you that in the demo too. So hopefully not going to just talk about this, right? So and really, when it comes to the strategy, anything you have. I mean, as I said, 99% of the models that are out there, if not higher, look at creating your roadmap for when you're going to move this into Gen 2. The performance you're going to have is just going to be fantastically better than it ever was before. We had some heavily used reports. We moved off of SSAS and we moved down to Gen 2. Honestly, by just moving the code, right? By just taking the code that was in SSAS and putting it onto Premium Gen 2, upping the model to 1580 or whatever it was, we saw a 900% increase in performance on the models and the reports that these are using. Now, that's that. You're not going to always see that. I'm not going to guarantee that. I'm none of that stuff, but that's what our users were seeing, and we actually had metrics and telemetry that showed that it was fantastic. So our users were very happy by going over to this, and not just our front end users, but our developers were really happy too, because no one wants to spend big chunks of time troubleshooting refresh errors and refresh issues, especially when the refresh issue was, well, there's just too much stuff in the service, right? And it took too long to do those refreshes. Now Gen 2 is much faster. It gets things through in a much quicker clip, and it handles that memory better. So please do think about that. All right. Now, I am about to go into a demo. All right. All right. Here we go. Buckle down. I'm going to be going pretty fast here. So if you have questions, write them down because I'm going to be flying around. All right, let's go. Okay, so when it comes to Power BI Premium Gen 2, signing up for Gen 2 is something that you have to do in your O365 account. You have to first get premium cores assigned to your tenant. Then you'll be ready to go if you haven't done that. If you have no premium so far, you have to get those cores assigned to you first. Once they've been assigned, you can go into the, oh my gosh, settings and admin portal. That admin portal will bring you through, and you'll go into your capacity settings, and you'll see all of your premium capacities that are available to you. You'll see the number of cores that you have available. Going into any one of your premium capacities will allow you to see, well, if you're using Gen 1, there'll be a little toggle up at the top for you to flip over to Gen 2. If you flip on that toggle, you will be converted over to Gen 2 without you having to do anything or do anything else, and it'll hit your models. And it'll hit your models relatively quickly. The entire Power BI team is preparing their infrastructure to automatically migrate all of their models into Gen 2 some point in time within the next 6 months, I think. Unless if they've announced that date and someone knows it, puts it in the column or put it in the chat. Otherwise, be prepared. This is going to come for almost anyone anyways, okay? So once you've done that, you're going to have a big option here about managing auto scale. You want to enable auto scale, and some of you may want to, some of you may not. The big thing that you're going to need to have is you're going to need to make sure that you have Azure subscription that's assigned. Oh, come on. A subscription and a resource group, okay? So that's one subscription, one resource group per premium, per user tenant. Once you've enabled this, you do have the ability to set in how many cores are available to people or not, right? So if I wanted, and I want to be smart, like, hey, I can never go over 2 cores because I know that 25% of my resources, that blows away my spend, right? So I don't want to go above that. And okay, so I could set that in. I could also say, hey, you know what? This is going to be end of month, end of quarter. I want to have 64 cores available for me. I could turn that on, and now I have 64 cores of available compute that are just, come on now. They'll just be available for me and my resources when or if this comes on, okay? So now, as you can see, it's now enabled. If my resources ever go above that 100%, or as they start to approach that 100%, cores will start to turn on one at a time until I get through all 64 cores. Now, this is my actual bank account, so I'm going to turn that off just in case, because I don't have that kind of money. But once you've enabled a core, that core will stay on for 24 hours. At that 24-hour mark, if that core is no longer in use, it will get shut off automatically. There's nothing more you have to do. You don't have to set up scripts to run and watch. You don't have to set up run books that you monitor your run books that are monitoring the stuff to make sure that they don't actually ever get accidentally turned off. None of that ends up having to be done. You're just up and running and you're good to go. Okay. Once you get that together, the next huge thing, and this is massive, is you could start to put together the capacity metrics report. And we're going to go over to that in a second. This is something that you just download from the service. You can start to use, and you're good to go. Okay. You will want to turn on your notifications on all of these items, right? So you're going to want to turn them on. The biggest thing is at that 80% capacity, so you get alerted every time you're going to start to scale up, move up. This is something that you want to have up and ready. Okay. You can choose at a capacity by capacity basis who the admins are, who gets notification on this. So if you have many premium capacities and you want to distribute these out, this is something you can just define who's able to do that or who gets notification of the scale resources. This is really important, especially when you talk about people who are coming in and potentially you have many different business units. And let's say finance has a premium capacity and sales has a premium capacity. Finance has allowance for 25% additional spend. Sales allows for 100% additional spend, right? Something along those lines. You want them each to get notifications around their scaling and when they run into issues, right? You still can do contributor turn that off. Admin permissions allow you to define who's allowed to deploy and manage and define workspaces on this. So you can say, okay, these are the 3 people who are allowed to, make changes to this, right? Yeah, make changes to this so they can go in and make changes, adjust this stuff up and down. So make sure that you have set this up inside your organizations. You never want to be in a situation where there's just a singular person, because it's always good to have a backup in case you're on vacation, right? Workloads are still there. Many of the same settings are there that you used to have when it comes to the AI, memory limits, all of that good stuff. Please do remember that because of the scale prioritization and scale compute on this, you do want to keep a close eye on what your refresh interval is, especially around your minimum execution interval. And this comes for this is really important if you're especially inside the Power Platform and you have people that are building out APIs that are triggering off things inside of your Power BI dataset. You do not want to get someone who accidentally starts to trigger the refresh of a Power BI dataset 5,000 times an hour or something along those lines. That can cause you no end of grief and issue in trying to resolve it. The next big thing that you want to make sure that you do is you establish and turn on the read-write for XMLA endpoints. This is what's going to, this is going to be the big one that allows you to manage your code and manage your models outside of the Power BI service. This is super important. Make sure that you include the read-write on, and get that all up and running. This allows you to see where your workspaces are assigned to this capacity. All right. So workspaces are important, but the reason that they're important is, especially when it comes to how you manage your data sets, you want to make sure that you have your data sets inside of one workspace, XMLA read-write on, premium per user for your dev and QA environments, because that will allow you to go in and say, I want to create a pipeline that runs off of my demo data sets, right? So all of my data sets get deployed out here. I want to do this and I want to create a pipeline that allows me to manage this. I could call this my demo pipeline, right? I could create this. I can assign my production workspace to it. So this is going to be my production. And I'm going to assign my demo data sets to it. Again, something very easy to do, right? Draggy, droppy, clicky, clacky type stuff, right? No production efforts necessary for that, right? I've got this all up and running. I've got this good to go. I can now go into my data sets. and I could say deploy it to a previous stage. This is going to create a workspace for me in my test environment. It's going to automatically deploy all of my models and everything backwards on me. Okay. Now I can, come on. You see, I am working without a net. This is live.
Killing me softly.
Okay, so let's presume that gets done. I now have my pipelines. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now I've got this ready. I can then even go back and I can deploy this to my previous stage. I've now got an entire pipeline of my code created, sent all the way back through into my various workspaces. So I've got my demo datasets development, demo datasets test. If I click on any one of these links, it will take me through to that workspace that was created for it. So you can see I've got my demo datasets, and this is development. Here's where you go in and you change your premium to premium per user on your lower environments. You want to do that for both of your datasets, right? Because now I'm appropriately managing my premium consumption. But I'm not having like bad, or I'm not having any of the sample stuff come in and make any changes. Yep, that's fine. But now I've got these all set up and I'm ready to go. So I've got test, dev, and I've got my actual full-on production data set or workspace that I'm available to use for deployment of data sets. But here is where it gets really helpful when it comes to building out our models. If I go into settings again and I go to premium, one of the big things I'm going to have down here is my workspace connection, right? See this guy right here? I can clip on copy. That's copied into my data set. And here is truly the magic here. So I can log into SSMS, and everyone here's familiar with this. Yes, no, hope so. SSMS for browsing content. I just go to analysis services. I can paste in my data set that I had. I want to make sure that I've got my Azure Active Directory signed in. I've got my email address in there. I sign in. It's going to authenticate me. Oh, come on now. I sign in. And now I can manage my models on my service, right? So now I have availability to go in and look at all of the models that are out there. So right now, isn't the workspace that I had? Oh yeah, it was. This is it. Yeah, okay. So it allows me to go in and see the workspaces that are out there. Now, what I can do here is if I want to become more advanced and more sophisticated with my models, I've got my new Data God model that's available. I love it. I've built it out inside Power BI. This is something that I'm using all over the place. I want to up my game, and I want to start to manage this model inside of separately from a Power BI file. All I do is go over to my external tools, and I launch my tabular editor. If you're not familiar with Tabular Editor, please become familiar with Tabular Editor. It is hands up the best tool on the market when it comes to building and managing tabular models. It is super important for you. Once my tabular model is open, it's already connected up to my Data God model right here. Now I have the option of deploying that out into the service. Now I know I've already connected to the service here, so I'm good to go for that. Now I can go to Model Deploy. My little deployment wizard's going to pop up and say, okay, where do you want this guy to deploy to? I choose my server, click on Next. It's going to sign me in again because, why not? I'm going to call this one my Data God model. Right? I'm going to go to Deploy, Next, Deploy. It's going to run and it's going to automatically deploy this out into the service. And that's done. I'm going to hit refresh on my, there we go. And there's my Data God model is now available for me. Okay. So now a big thing you want to make sure that you do inside of these models is once that's out there, and you can see that it's connected out into the service. And no longer do I have to have a report attached to this. I just have my model that's now available to me. I can go into settings and just make sure that it picked up the gateway as it should. Here we go. I've connected to my gateway, so I'm all set there. I would want to do a refresh on this because all I've done so far is I've made that connection in place, and I've made that connection. I've deployed the code, but no data is out inside the service. Okay, so this is still something that I need to make sure that I've gone in and I've adjusted. But because this is now there, I've done my refresh, or I've kicked that off. That's up and running. I do want to go into in settings. One of the big things I want to do is I also want to make sure that I've done my endorsement on this. Okay. So because this is my blessed sanctified model that I really like, I want to make sure that I've certified it, that I've made it discoverable for people. Now, in your organization, you may have restrictions on what is a certified data set, right? So the certified data sets are those sanctioned enterprise-wide data sets that you have support, you have management, that are built by IT professionals that are going to be refreshed all the time, that you have SLAs around that whole, whatever you consider production, it meets all of those levels when it comes to production. Back to your question on Paul's question about how do you know about which reports should you build your goals off of? Goals should come from certified data sets, right? If you're not building from certified data sets, you run into potential issues where they just stop running forever, right? So work with certified data sets. Anytime I certify a data set, I do like to go in and I do like to give myself an icon. So I'm going to give myself an icon here. Let's see here. Matthew Roach will be the icon. So this is going to be the icon for this data set. So now my data set is up and running. If I go into data sets, this is now available. Here's the data set that we just certified and made available, the Matthew Roach one. So we're now good to go there. Now, if I open up a Power BI report, I can then start to take advantage of this data set that is available to me inside of Power BI. I had a blank one open. I did not. Now you say to yourself, like, hey, Chris, this is all well and good. Actually, hang on. But if I go to Power BI data sets, it's going to open up and I'm going to see here in my demo data sets, here's my data god model, my certified data set that I can use. I wish the icons or images flow through, but they don't. Tough nookie. I'm good to go there. Okay, and you say, okay, hey, this is great. This is nice. We've seen the XML endpoints that using Power BI data sets. I get that. That's cool. What was this thing that you talked about? Log analytics. And Paul, I'm so glad that you asked about that one because frankly that's a big deal. So inside of log analytics, one of the things that you can do inside of your settings for Azure connections, so you can only have one log analytics workspace connected to one report or to one per workspace. So if you are like me and you pay for this stuff, you don't want to have a whole bunch of log analytics workspaces where people aren't doing stuff. So I created a log analytics workspace. I've connected that into this workspace for my reports. I've actually enabled external consumption so I can start to understand utilization and consumption of what's going on inside of my reports. But this is relatively easy. If I go into log analytics, all you do is you create a log analytics workspace. Once you've defined that inside of your, and there's links out there. I've got a document out on how you do this. But under IAM, one of the big things that you want to make sure that you have done is that you set up the the Power BI service as a contributor into your log analytics workspace. It's something that, if you haven't done this before, you will have it won't be able to get set up. But once that's done, you can go in and configure your log analytics workspace. Once that's together, you can then download this templated report. And honestly, this is thousands of hours of development that you don't have to do. So frankly, I'm super excited about this. This template report will pull all the information out of your log analytics report, so you can see all the utilization of people that are going in and consuming what's going on inside your Power BI, as well as highlight what are the worst performing queries that you have going on inside of your models, right? This could be really helpful in keeping track of, when you need to update things, where you have issues. Frankly, you can kind of see that, the models I have are, fortunately, they're fairly well built, so I don't have a lot of drag on this. But getting to this level of information when it comes to trolling through your log analytics workspace from either like analysis services, or if you're trying to just build this out of SSAS, is thousands upon thousands of hours of time. So once you have log analytics set up, put this on top of your report, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, so that if you ever run into an issue where you're not refreshing, you run into a problem where you've got performance issues, or your refreshes aren't running as you thought they would, this will allow you to go in and start to realize what's causing your problem. Is it really that Excel spreadsheet that's causing the biggest issue? And you will be surprised at how often, if you have enterprise data sets running against an Excel spreadsheet that's in OneDrive, that could be your biggest hang up. And often that comes because, it's an Excel spreadsheet that's huge and people are using it all the time. So they're putting it in locked states. So Power BI can't get full access to it, right? So it kind of tells you, hang on, if you're going to be using this, copy it to a different location. Every night, copy it to a different location and set your Power BI to run off that location, so that you're truly getting exclusive access to that data, right? Or something along those lines, right? But this is a huge advantage to anyone and everyone working inside of Power BI. Yes, actually, Sue, that is one of the great things that you can kind of start to delve into in here, is understanding. Well, okay, so let's clarify. Is you control through these records and filters to find out if queries and columns are actively used inside of reports that are being consumed inside your service. Like, I think log analytics is capped at the last 30 days. Um, so if, let's say, it's a year-end report and people only look at it once a year, this won't tell you if this is, if it's being used inside those reports. But if you're looking at reports and a model that's in use all day, every day, and that you're not doing these like one-off reports from there, this is a great place for you to go in and start to delve in. And frankly, because you have full access to this, I mean, like, this is a model, right? Like, I can go in and do anything I want in here. I could start to customize this infinitely to start to ask those questions, to start to meet those needs, right? That's why it's important to have all your data sets in one workspace and just point it to that. I think there's some challenges when it comes to storage and logging of many workspaces into one log analytics space, and the potential like overflow and flooding that would come in, and the cost that would also come into that. And that's why they're segmenting it out. They've talked about having that overarching log analytics workspace, but I think that's what's prevented the actual implementation of that, is the challenges that immediately start to arrive from it. And that is why, again, you can consolidate your data sets, right? Like, okay, even if it's based upon your areas, like Rockwell has 26 business units, right? where we have 26 business unit data set areas. We have a log analytics set up for each of those 26 business units here, right? And so they have reports that sit on top of that, and then they can go in and they can monitor the content that they have available to, right? So that gives those content creators and those people who are working and operating in that space, that gives them more control over what's going on inside their area, and realizing that, like, oh, I accidentally stepped over Nicole's refreshes, and I do it every single day, right? Whoops. Maybe I should refactor my stuff, look at incremental refreshing, right? Get that in place. So Paul, I 100% feel your pain. I have in the neighborhood of 7,000 workspaces that I have to manage. So, yeah, I'm definitively not creating 7,000 uh, log analytics workspaces, but I will create 26, right? So that's a very different level, right? And so, it all comes into what grain of control do you want, right? So, like, uh, if you want to be certified, a certified data set has to be in an enterprise data set, right? And those enterprise data sets have to have log analytics on it. It has to have these reports on it, right? Like, these are all of the mechanisms that you start to put in place to build out that that uh, that advanced adoption of the tool, right? And again, I wouldn't try to do this on your ad hoc workspaces or your self-service workspaces. That's something that most people aren't going to really get into, right? Like, I don't know any user who's going to come in and start to look over the query timings um, uh, in DAX and try to figure out why something's not working, right? Like, that's a completely different thing, okay? But those enterprise people, the professional people, like, and the people who are really trying to take their game to the next level, this is a great place to go. So if anyone who's coming to meetings like this, honestly, if it's not already in your wheelhouse, think about looking at this down the road. At least be aware that this is a thing, so that, a year from now or a month from now or whatever it is, and you're like, man, my data set's not working right. Yeah, I'm in Gen 2. I wonder if I could get a log analytics workspace on this so that I could start to delve in and understand why the heck is this all FUPA, right? Setting up these log analytics workspaces, depending upon your organization, right? Like, I have pretty high level permissions at Rockwell, but even I can't create them independently by myself. I have to submit requests to get them created. A little bit of a pain, but you can get that done, right? Okay. So once you've kind of done that, now that's some of the big advantages of having that Gen 2, doing those deployments, integrating it with log analytics. Another big thing of the premium capacity is your ability to share content both internally and potentially externally within your organization. Now, I highly recommend you become very cautious around anything that, when it comes to sharing externally. That type of a thing has all sorts of potential security threats associated with it, so be very careful. But sharing internally can be incredibly beneficial to your organization, especially when it comes to bringing context to your Power BI reports that you have and that you make available. So it's really great to, like, embed your report inside of, like, a SharePoint online, right? And again, very easy to do. Once this is all done, you just copy that link. I hop into whatever SharePoint site I want to do. I click on edit. My page is going to go into edit mode. And I'm going to create a new section. Oh, come on now. I got to be like that. New one column. I'm going to add in my Power BI content. Going to ask me what report. I'm going to paste in the name of the data set. Paste this in. Hit enter. It's going to ask me what name or what page I want to connect it into. And now I have complete control over this as well. So I could choose if I want to turn on or off the navigation pane. The filter pane, I can have that on or off to be able to show if they want want to do that, as well as the action bar. I can leave that on or off as to what I want to embed. So really easy to embed that inside of a SharePoint site, but it's also pretty easy to embed this inside of an external site. So publish it to web. Now, if you're going to do that, one of the things I do recommend, especially if you run or manage like a blog, or you're making this available externally, is that you take a screenshot of the interactive report that you want, and upload that into the service. All right. What this will do is it'll ensure that when people are going out and hitting your site, every time that someone hits your site and hits your blog, your Power BI data set doesn't have to render and show that information to people. This can really help when it comes to reducing your consumption costs, keeping things really snappy for users who are actively interacting with your content. But it makes it really easy to use. In fact, I'll even show you how easy it is to embed inside your website. So if I go out to kratosbi.com, here is my website, my little web editor. I can go in and I can go in and change and adjust my website. So I can paste my little iframe in. I can update that. I can start to add in additional context around, what other information would I want people to have when it comes to consuming this data set, right? So I could say, hey, if you're not a subscriber in a video, here's my channel. You should make sure that you go out and subscribe. But I could go out and I could say, hey, here's my visualization guide. I want to make sure that people are using this. Go. I could copy that in. I can make this available. I can paste that, hit enter, and now I talk about, right? I make it easy to just add this, you just add this in. So now, now instead of you having to send people to many different places or them bouncing around within Power BI, and not knowing what it is they're looking at and trying to remember where they need to go and what they need to do, you can send them to a concise location. That not only does it include the Power BI report that they have access to, but they can actually go and they can actually see it out on the website. So it's not just the Power BI content that you're sharing and viewing, but there's a video that you can give people some information about the report, why you should use the report, some tips around it, right? Information about that, as well as even like a write-up and a narrative around that utilization. And because I have that screenshot, the screenshot of the report, it becomes really easy to for it to render as many times as necessary, and I don't actually go in until I actually click on it, and then it takes me into the report, and instead of like having to navigate that internally, right? But you can still go and consume, work with this as you would any other Power BI report. For those of you who are looking for more about like creating good data models, do please check out my website. I think I saw a link out there. I have posted the new Kratos BI Data Gods model guide out there. So this is available. It talks about how you prep your data mart, how you build your data set, how you validate the data that's out there, how you add in paginated reports, and then how you combine them all into an advanced analytics solution. This information will be very helpful for you, especially if you're struggling to get up and running with tabular models and tabular designs and data sets. This should be very helpful for you. All right. And then, as you said, do check out the site as it is. I do try really hard to highlight all of the great data gods and goddesses that are out there. These are people inside the industry that you should be following and watching for what they do, how they do it. Frankly, I learn everything I do from them. This is a great place for you to go to understand how you should be working and operating. Okay. If you're not using, well, everyone knows Tabular Editor. I gave a demo of that. DAX Studio, great for your tools and management there. But Report Analyzer, if you haven't seen Michael Kovlowski at Elegant BI's, He's the guy who made Microsoft's a KPI lake. He's the engineer. He's the genius behind this. Do take a look at this report analyzer tool. He has all the code out on GitHub, so you can download and install this and get this up and running. What this basically does is performance analyzer. What you do is you start recording, you click on each page, and then you export the results into a folder. You have to have the report itself, the PBIX file, and the logs in the exact same folder. Then you launch his tool that he's created here, and it will allow you to interactively explore your report, finding the worst performing visuals that are inside of your report, so you can figure out what's causing you the biggest sinks and the worst problems inside your loads. It is fantastic, especially for those of you who like me. I've got many reports where it's like, visual. You just added in 80,000 visuals and like, oh, now it's slow and it's dog crap, right? Well, how do you know where to start fixing it? This allows you to go in and figure out what are the dog crappiest of dog craps that you got to fix, right? So it's fantastic. Do check out Power BI Fest is this weekend. It starts Saturday, very or actually late Friday night. I will be presenting there as well. I've got another presentation that I'm going to be doing there, so do check that out. This is a schedule of events. I'm at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, so join us there. Okay. This is not a U.S. based event. This is actually, I don't even know who sets this up. But it starts at like, what is this? This is U.S. time. This is Central Time Zone. So it starts at 4 o'clock on tomorrow. Oh, Reza Rad, and yeah, he's the one who set this up with Ken Plus and or Pulse and Matt Ellington. Thanks, everybody.